Late on the night of March 29, 1975, a 41-year-old man sat drinking at the 19th Hole Cocktail Lounge in Hamilton, Ohio. He confided in the bartender that his mother was threatening to evict him and he needed to solve the problem. By the following afternoon, 11 members of his own family were dead. He had spent 41 years accumulating the rage required to pull the trigger. This violence was the final outcome of a life defined by isolation and internal conflict. To understand how a family dinner became a slaughter, we have to look at the environment that shaped James Ruppert. James Ruppert was raised in a deeply hostile environment. His mother, Charity, openly told him she wished he had never been born, making it clear she would have preferred a daughter. The household dynamics fractured entirely in 1947 when his father died of tuberculosis. In his absence, James's older brother, Leonard Jr., stepped into the vacuum and assumed the role of his primary tormentor. By the age of 16, the relentless bullying drove James to take a bedsheet from his room and attempt to hang himself. He survived, but the failed attempt marked a grim turning point. James resigned himself to a life as the inferior, permanent victim, burying his rage deep inside rather than seeking help or an escape. By 1975, the contrast between the two brothers was stark. Leonard Jr. was a successful electrical engineer with a thriving marriage and 8 children. James was an unemployed loner, still living in his mother's house and facing an impending eviction. What little financial independence James possessed was wiped out on a chaotic trading floor. During the 1973 to 1974 stock market crash, he lost his remaining cash, leaving him entirely dependent on the family he despised. With his savings gone and an eviction notice looming, Ruppert was trapped. The daily humiliation of his living situation had finally pushed his resentment to a breaking point. The Sissikal preparations began weeks in advance. James visited a local gun store to inquire about silencers for his weapons, and witnesses later recalled seeing him practicing his aim by shooting tin cans along the banks of the Great Miami River. On March 30th, Leonard Jr., his wife Alma, and their 8 children arrived at the family's Minor Avenue house to celebrate Easter dinner. Outside, the children scattered across the front lawn for an Easter egg hunt. Inside, James remained completely isolated upstairs, sleeping off a night of heavy drinking. The normal, chaotic noise of a large, happy family gathering echoing up the stairs served as the final catalyst for a man starved of affection his entire life. At 4 p.m., James woke up and loaded an arsenal, a .357 Magnum, 2 .22 caliber handguns, and a .22 rifle. He walked down the stairs. Looking at the floor plan of the house, we can track exactly how the ambush unfolded.
James walked directly into the kitchen and executed his brother, Leonard Jr., in the head, before turning the gun on his sister-in-law, Alma. As his mother, Charity, lunged toward him, he shot her once in the head and twice in the chest. The 3 adults were dead in seconds. James then rounded the corner into the living room where the children were playing. Moving methodically through the room, he systematically executed his 8 nieces and nephews. To ensure there were 0 survivors, he walked through the space a second time, firing additional rounds into anyone who was still breathing. The youngest victim was his 4-year-old nephew, John. When police arrived, they found the boy dead on the floor near a foil-covered Easter egg. The ballistics data reveals the surgical brutality of the attack. James fired 44 shots. 40 of them struck their targets. The entire massacre was over in less than 5 minutes. Investigators found a single tipped wastebasket in the house. There was no chaotic struggle. It was an ambush designed to prevent anyone from escaping. The reality inside the house was so gruesome that authorities noted blood was actively seeping through the first-floor floorboards and dripping down into the dark basement below. James waited 3 full hours in the house before finally calling the police. When local law enforcement arrived, he stood waiting by the door. He immediately refused to cooperate with questioning, signaling his intention to plead insanity. The trauma of the murders continued to claim lives long after the arrest. Exactly 3 years later, on Easter Sunday, the grandfather of the 8 dead children died by suicide. The blast radius of a familicide is never contained to the physical crime scene. It permanently shatters the lives of the extended family left behind. The case triggered a highly complicated legal battle, eventually leading to a retrial in 1982. The defense pivoted entirely on psychiatric definitions of sanity, turning the courtroom into a debate over James's exact state of mind. Evaluating the 5 minutes it took to carry out the killings, a 3-judge panel arrived at a bifurcated legal conclusion. For his mother and brother, James was found legally sane and guilty of first-degree murder, a calculated act of revenge. But for his sister-in-law and the 8 children, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. The ruling suggests a rare psychological transition. It accepted that while Ruppert was sane when he killed his mother and brother, the act itself triggered a break from reality that covered the murder of the children. A calculated plan had become a mindless slaughter. James Ruppert received consecutive life sentences. Denied parole at every hearing, he remained incarcerated until he died of natural causes in a prison medical facility in 2022, at the age of 88. Today, the property on Minor Avenue still stands. It is a quiet, modest structure that harbors the dark history of the deadliest family massacre in American history. The Easter Sunday Massacre remains a case study of how years of internal trauma, left to fester in isolation, can culminate in a single act of total self-destruction.